save them for the end. And at the end, we'll probably take off the slideshow so it's a little more conversational and I can talk directly to all of you. So as Caitlin mentioned, my name is Debbie. I'm Director of Partner Engagement at Nonprofit Vote, and I use she, her pronouns. So a little bit about Nonprofit Vote. We were founded in 2005 by Nonprofit Vote, by partners across the country who were nonprofits that came together that were interested in making sure that voting was a piece of the work that they were doing because voting affected all of the issues that they worked on. Now we're a 501c3 organization and we are the leading source of nonprofit resources for integrating voter engagement into your ongoing activities and services. So we do trainings like this that are a little more top line, but we also work directly with partners to create things like toolkits that they share directly with their members. So before we dive in, I just want to talk a little bit about the landscape. Uh, some of the things that we know is democracy is distorted by gaps in voter participation, meaning people who don't vote are less likely to be represented. We also know that we cannot rely on political actors to ensure a representative democracy. Politicians are interested in making sure that they get elected, not in making sure that everyone votes, which means that they are not always focused on turning everyone out. And lastly, we know that voter-friendly policies are good, but they are not good enough. They help people and they make it easier for people to cast a ballot when they know the rules. But if they don't know how to vote, it may still be a difficult process for them, especially in a year like this where many of the rules are changing due to the pandemic. So one of the things to remember is that lack of voter contact fuels gaps. So when we don't talk to people who haven't voted before, they're labeled as unlikely voters and then they're not contacted by political campaigns. I myself, when I was young, I missed the first 2 years I was eligible to vote. And then even when I started voting, it took a few years for campaigns to contact me because I was still labeled as an unlikely voter until they had decided that I had proven that I would be a habitual voter. So that negative feedback loops means that people who are uh, not, who maybe haven't voted consistently are not contacted by campaigns. So the question in this is, how can organizations like ours make a difference? I'll talk about some of the big picture things, but I also want to talk about like things that you can do right now. I think people are maybe wondering, we're so close to the election, does it make sense for us to even do voter engagement if we haven't done it before? The short answer is yes, there are a lot of easy, tangible things that you can do. So one exciting fact that I want to share is that when engaged by nonprofits, potential voters were 11 percentage points more likely to cast a ballot than comparable people not engaged by nonprofits. This is from a report we did in 2018 called Engaging New Voters. As I mentioned, the PDF will be shared later if you want to read more into it. If you've ever done voter engagement work, you know that 11 percentage points is a huge difference in voter turnout. Nonprofits are also really good at voter engagement. They have an established presence in the communities that they serve. We hold trusted relationships with the people we serve. They expect to be able to get good information from us, and voting is just another piece of that. And we have access to members of our community that traditional campaigns tend to overlook. Furthermore, nonprofits benefit from doing voter engagement. It helps get the attention of candidates. When your constituents and the people that you work with turn out to vote, candidates are going to pay more attention to the issues that you care about. It helps build representation in your community, and those voters become community advocates who are involved in other pieces of democracy, and that is really helpful for a nonprofit. One important thing to remember is that nonprofits are required to stay nonpartisan. So in 1954, Congress, Congress added a sentence to the Treasury regulations requiring charities to remain nonpartisan in elections. There's a lot of information here, kind of saying like nonprofits must remain nonpartisan. But what's more important is that it doesn't say nonprofits can't do voter engagement work. In fact, it lists out several things that nonprofits can do. They can do voter registration and get out the vote drives. They can publicize voter education guides. All of that basic voter information is considered a nonpartisan activity. Being nonpartisan also has benefits. When we work in diverse communities, there's diversity of political opinions, and it's important that we acknowledge those. It also strengthens our ability to advocate across partisan lines on the issues that we care about. And again, it makes us trusted messengers who can engage underserved populations. This is not directly related to this slide, but I wanted to note that almost all the images here have little links to the side if you are interested in them. They're actually posters that we did in partnership with an arts organization, and they're really cool if you want to share any of them. So when engaging potential voters, nonprofits have a lot of options, including providing unbiased information about the election. This includes dates and deadlines for elections, early voting, registration, and mail ballots. This also includes how to find a polling place. In many states, polling places are changing. States are opting either for more polling places that are hoping to reduce long lines or less but larger polling locations where people are able to stand outside while they wait to cast a ballot. Nonprofits can also share information about what's on the ballot, including who is running for office and what issues or referendums are on the ballot, and they can share why voting is important. I think this is a really important piece. As nonprofits, we have missions that the people we work with are directly interested in and care about. And when we connect voting to the issues that we work with them on a regular basis, that helps make sure people have the context that they need in order to feel confident and understand why voting is important for them. When engaging with candidates, there's also a lot that nonprofits can do. They can facilitate relationship building between candidates and the community through things like sharing policy ideas and educating candidates about your issues. If you have issues you work on all the time and you want to share the information with all the candidates, that's a great way to to help give them more information about something that's important to you. You can also attend candidate forums and events to ask questions. You can even host candidate forums, or you can create candidate questionnaires that help talk about different issues and where candidates align on them. The big thing to remember when engaging with candidates is that you want to treat all candidates equally. You want to invite all of them to events at your organization, share your policy ideas or research with every candidate. You want to ask questions at their events or forums for all candidates. If you host a candidate forum, you want all viable candidates to participate, and the same with conducting a candidate questionnaire. We know that some of these nonpartisan rules can be a little bit squishy. Some of it is as much about perception as it is about legality. And so if you have questions, you can contact us at info@nonprofitvote.org. But I also would like to advocate that you contact Boulder Advocacy. They have lawyers who think about this all the time, so they'll definitely be able to answer your questions. We also have more nonpartisan materials on our website. When you think about what you can't do, though, there are some very obvious and big things you can't. As a 501c3, you can't endorse a candidate. You can't make campaign contributions. You can't rate or rank candidates. And you can't let candidates use your facilities or resources unless they're made equally available to all candidates. So if a candidate was to reach out to you to ask if they can use your use a building or something else that is a part of your facilities to host a rally, then you would then have to make that opportunity available to every single candidate. So that's just some of the things to remember. Now we get to talk about some of the things that you can do in a more tangible way. If you are just getting started at voter engagement, that's not a problem. We have a lot of resources for beginners. We'll probably talk a little bit more about the nitty-gritty things. So if there are pieces of this that you feel like are too much for you, we have a Getting Started at Voter Engagement, a checklist that is on our website, and that is easily readable and also has everything you should know if you're starting voter engagement from scratch so that you don't forget to do anything. So doubling back to our Engaging New Voters report that I mentioned earlier, when we're doing voter engagement work, there's a couple key things to remember around motivating people to get involved and implementing your voter engagement work. So when you're motivating people, you want to tie it to empowerment for the people you serve, align it with your mission, highlight visibility, engage stakeholders, and never forget about staff. If you have staff, motivating and inspiring your staff with voter information can be just as effective as turning out voters. Lastly, you want to think about implementation. When you implement, it's always great to have one person who is in charge of everything, and they're kind of the knowledge holder to make sure all of it works. You want to make it personal, so connecting, again, this is related to aligning it with your mission, connecting it. You want to rely on your existing services, so what you're already doing, how can you tie voter engagement into that so it doesn't feel like an extra thing? You can use active tabling or outreach to boost results. We add or outreach because we acknowledge that many people won't be doing active tabling this year due to the pandemic and have relying on other ways to reach out to people. And again, don't leave out your staff. Maybe they want to volunteer to participate in sharing voter engagement information, or maybe they have questions about how to register and vote. So I don't necessarily want to think about how close the election is because, you know, I've been doing a lot of work leading up to it, but I'm still very excited about all the things that people can do from now until election day. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there's still time. Everything you do makes an impact, whether you have been running a huge campaign or you just share a little bit of information with the people that you work with or your friends, your community. Everyone can always use a little extra information when they're thinking about voting, especially if there's someone who doesn't have all the information or know where to get that information. So one of the things that you can do is promote early voting opportunities. I don't know if you've heard the saying October voter around anywhere on social media. Maybe it's just me because I'm really ingrained in this process, but encouraging people to mail their ballot back if they have a mail-in ballot or to utilize early voting options is a great way to make sure that their voice is heard and will stop them from having to deal with potentially long lines on election day. You can distribute sample ballots. So this may look like sending them to an organization like Ballot Ready, which has places for them to be able to look up their ballot information, or sending them the ballot from their local elections office. Either way, ballot education is a great way to make sure people feel confident when they go and vote. They may have heard about the presidential campaign, but sometimes you open your ballot and it's way longer, there's a backside to it, and maybe they haven't had time to research their local elections offices as much. So distributing sample ballots can help make sure people feel prepared. Again, mobilize staff and volunteers, help make sure they have the information that they need so that they are ready to vote as well. You can educate voters on the voting process. This is really timely because it happens to be National Voter Education Week. We're near the end of it, but tomorrow is Friday, the end of it all. You can visit votereducationweek.org to get more information about that, and that will also be on a later slide. But if you want to kind of plug into all the resources that were shared and see what is up there, they have tons of graphics and images to help people learn about the voting process and to make a plan to vote. Simple reminders about voting can be really helpful as well. Reminders of when the election day is or when their early voting polls open. All of those things can help make sure people feel prepared. You can advertise election day help. This will be a little more prevalent on a later side, but the election protection hotline can be really helpful for people as they're trying to think through the voting process. And lastly, you can plan an election day celebration. What does that look like this year? Well, it's a little bit different. We know that we may not get results on election night. In fact, we may have around a week until we have final election results. However, having an election day celebration is a great way to let people know that we may not get results right away, and that's okay because there will be more mail-in ballots being counted, and a way to just celebrate that they went and voted, they participated in democracy if they were not eligible to vote, or that they volunteered. It's a great way to just get people excited about the process. We also know that a lot more people will be doing digital engagement this year, like plugging, and there's a few things that you can do to make sure to amplify your digital engagement, like plug into national holidays and events. You can create unique content to fit your audience. You can consider calls and texts to reach out to potential voters personally. This can look like you running your own call and text phone bank to the people that you work with, to um, to staff and volunteers or any other groups that you have access to, or maybe you could volunteer to do calls and texts with a group that's already doing voter engagement work. You can also utilize online tools for voter engagement like vote411.org, which is put together by the League of Women Voters and has a lot of information about candidates and is kind of a one-stop shop if you need to look up information, or Rock the Vote, which is great if you need to register to vote. So I do want to talk a little bit about how voters can cast a ballot by November 3rd. I think how people are voting this year has changed a lot. Uh, as we mentioned, either because of changing election laws, concerns around the pandemic, things like that. People, as long as people make a plan to vote, they will be able to cast a ballot and they will feel more confident in the process. So encourage people to check their voter registration status, decide how they will cast a ballot by mail, early in person, or on election day, to find out what's on their ballot and know what they need to vote, whether that's an ID or signatures or other confirmation in order to cast their ballot. So one of the things you'll see floating around, there are a lot of checklists around this plan that help make sure people are prepared. You can make your own or you can share one that you find, but it does help people think through the process. And we know that people are more likely to vote when they have a plan. When people are voting by mail, it's important to walk them through the steps so that they understand. Mail-in ballots do always come with instructions on how to fill it out. However, they may be a little bit complicated, so they may require some assistance in doing that. If someone wants to vote by mail, make sure they know, do they have to apply for a mail-in ballot? Some states require excuses. Some states you have to fill out a form, but you do not have to have an excuse. And some states and districts, like the District of Columbia, are all mail-in this year. They should also know what they need. They should also know what they need to do when they fill in the ballot. This includes how many envelopes does it have? Some of them have a secrecy envelope that you have to put your ballot in before the other envelope, and some of them require signatures on the outside of these envelopes. So these are important things to make that will help make sure their ballot gets counted. You also want them to know how they can turn in their ballot. Are they planning to drop it off at the post office? We recommend that no one drops in their ballot after October 20th, just to make sure it gets there in time, and to find another way to turn in their ballot. One of the things to remember around this is a lot of states are encouraging, um, that a lot of states are encouraging or changing their rules so that if the ballot is postmarked by election day, it will still be counted as long as it's received in a certain amount of time. But we're still encouraging people to mail ballots by October 20th if possible. The second is the ballot drop box. Many cities will have this, but it's pretty limited in where they'll be, so it could be a good option. Or dropping their ballot at their voting site. Either early voting or on election day, there will be potential options where they can drop it off. They may also be able to drop it off at their local elections office directly. This voting by mail fact sheet that I have linked here talks a little bit more about that. So it kind of walks voters through the process that they will need to know if they're going to vote by mail. If they're voting in person, it's important they know where their polling location is. As I mentioned earlier, the polling locations may be changing this year. Uh, Early voting sites, many more states are offering them either for extended amounts of time or for the first time ever, so that could be a good option. When voting early, voters may also be able to vote at more voting sites. On election day, it is likely that their polling location may have changed from a previous year, and so it's important to make sure they know that information. They should also know what they need to bring to the polls. Their face mask and their hand sanitizer will be really important because they may have to wait in line and they'll definitely be interacting with other people. They also likely need to bring some sort of identification, whether that's something that just has their address on it or is something that has their photo on it as well. These are important things to remember. And does their employer have a time off to vote policy? Is that time off to vote policy paid, unpaid, or don't they have a policy? We actually just started a campaign called Nonprofit Step Vote, aimed at getting nonprofits to offer paid time off to vote for people so that folks don't have to choose between a paycheck and casting their ballot if they're voting in person. Lastly, share the election protection hotline. It's 866-OUR-VOTE. You can also text into it as well as call. It's available at several different phone numbers in language. However, the main line also will have some language options. This is a really valuable resource. Every year they field thousands of calls from people with simple questions like, my polling location has changed. I don't know where it's at. How can I find it? And they answer those questions right on the spot for folks. And they also answer tougher questions like if they're worried about someone standing outside the polling location, what does that mean for them? So the election protection hotline is incredibly helpful, and they communicate directly with local elections officers to fix any issues that may be happening at a polling location. I know I've been talking for a while now, but I want to close with just highlighting a few of our resources that we have for you. First, we have a vast resource library. It covers everything from nonpartisanship to advocacy, voter engagement, and engaging with candidates. We also have a census piece that we're keeping up to date until that is officially closed. There are many resources on there, so if you're interested in learning more about those things, I'm happy to send you issues that may be helpful, or you can explore the library yourself. We also have a tool called Nonprofits Countdown to the Election. This platform has templates for emails, text, social media, anything you may need in order to share voting information, and it has cool graphics like the one featured here. It basically has information leading up to the election for every single week of, what are the things I should be sharing with folks right now, and what is the language I can use around that to make sure that they're ready. This has been a really valuable tool that we've been sharing out with folks, and you can still access it and use our social medias or come up with your own. We don't really care or feel super concerned about people using our exact language. We just want to give people the basic templates they need to share voting information. We also have state-by-state guides. These are printable PDFs that look something like this, but they're a little longer. They are shareable online as well as being printable, and they have as much information as they possibly have, including links to look more into things at your local elections office. Lastly, I want to plug, we're almost at the end of National Voter Education Week, but their resources will live on after the week is over if you want to check them out. And if you want to plug into another exciting holiday, Vote Early Day is October 24th. They'll be encouraging people to cast their ballot if they have not already cast their ballot prior to the election. They're really celebrating all month to make sure people are prepared, but using this as a big day of action, and you can still sign up for a partner for that as well. So I just want to say thank you for having me. I don't see any questions in the chat yet, but I'll be around for a little bit if you have any questions that you want to ask me. So I hope this was helpful.
Extremely helpful. Thank you, Debbie. It's so great to kind of see everything, you know, in such clear terms as we prepare. I feel slightly hopeless being, you know, stuck at home and not knowing how to get people involved, but all of the graphics that you have and the way that we can kind of approach it from a nonpartisan standpoint is really great. I don't have any questions from the chat. Does anybody have any questions here? The one question I have is, like, if you're engaging with somebody and they start to get political, do you have tactics to kind of address that as somebody that's trying to engage them just on the voting aspect?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially when you're representing your organization. If they're asking questions about like your stance on specific issues and you know the organization has a stance on them, then you can definitely share that information. However, if they want to talk to you about specific candidates, you can just say, you know, I am only here to do nonpartisan voter engagement. I can't actually talk to you about candidates. So, however, like I'm happy to answer any of your voting questions. I did voter registration a lot before I had this job, and people often try to engage in political conversations, and that was generally a pretty good way to shut it down. If they're persistent, you can just say, I really can't talk about this. Let me know if you would like to register to vote or have questions about your ballot. So pivoting is a good method for that. I see a question on if we go on the website recommended, are there ways to help as we hit the home stretch? The Nonprofit Vote website will have a lot of ways for people to get involved and things they can consider. So I recommend using the Nonprofit Countdown tool to kind of see messaging and share information with other folks. And I also, you know, if people are interested in volunteering specifically, I actually recommend, you know, seeing if there are local groups on the ground that are doing voter engagement in your community to see if you can do specific phone banking or texting information. We don't run a lot of that ourselves. We do more of the training folks to get prepared for the election aspect of it. But if you're in a specific community, we may be able to help get you connected, and it's totally okay for you to reach out to me.
Any other questions anybody has? All right. Well, we did record this session, so if you want to share it with any of your committees or anything like that, if you've got thinking of ways to get involved, that'll be live. Shannon will get that going. Jessica's asking, can we share it with an outside organization? That's a good question. I don't have an answer. I don't know, Debbie, if you have a preference of how this gets circulated.
I don't necessarily have a problem with it, although it might be easier to share the PDF of the slides, which I think will also be available. And that way, if folks have specific questions, then I can help directly answer them.
Yeah, and Jessica, just in terms of the recording, I'm not sure how it will be available to download or how that'll work. So I'll connect with Shannon and Katie on that. What our sort of restrictions are for members. Oh, great. Yeah, that's great. And definitely join the suffragette training on the 27th, I believe. Check the calendar. All right. Any other questions, concerns, comments, thoughts? All right, well, Debbie, I am so grateful for your time tonight. I can't even imagine how busy you must be. And I know all of us at the league, like this is on our mind of how we can get involved. So really, really appreciate it. And thank you to all the members tonight for taking time out of your busy schedules as well. You know, now that the cold weather is in, hopefully we'll all be even more excited to cozy up in front of our Zoom calls. So join our next trainings that we have in the upcoming weeks. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
That was great, Debbie. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad we were able to connect with you guys.
I'm glad. With the longer presentations, I always feel like I'm talking endlessly, so I can never, I always judge it a little more harshly, I think, but.
No, I mean, I was actually the whole time I was thinking like, I'm extremely impressed, like how like you just really had such a good like speaking time. It was easy to follow, really great. That was really great.
I've been practicing.
Right. That was good. It showed. How do you do these a lot, or is it? Yeah.
Sure. In various formats, like I try to make every presentation kind of unique to whoever I'm presenting to or the specific topics that they want. But I do like a lot of variations of similar things.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, how our league works is we take a summer break. So we're sort of a little behind the times, like in terms, like we kind of have, the fall is a lot of catch up since we're all volunteer based. We have two full-time employees, Shannon and Katie. But I feel like having you guys, now that we've made this connection, if you'd be willing to come back, I know people would love that. So maybe we can set something up even for the spring so we can kind of prepare for smaller elections, things like that, and kind of, of course it's always top of mind a month before a presidential election, but we want to be more involved throughout.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, this is what we do, so
great.
I'm happy to offer trainings in the future. I think I'm gonna hop off if that works
for
you. But
yeah, absolutely. Great. Thank you, Debbie. Thanks to everyone still on. All right, I'm going to end this call. All right. Bye.